Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Good. Well, look, let me gently introduce and move you across to the very capable hands of our presenters today, Monty Cholmeley and Mark Roberts. But before I do that, let me just tell you a bit about them. So Mark, give us a wave, Mark. Thank you. Mark has worked as a project manager actually for over 25 years, and BAMBA are engaged with both Mark and Monty to come in and support us on this work around workplace research in the field of mindfulness. Because of both their skills, right? So 25 years of project management, but he's now a freelance consultant and a researcher. And Masters researched, Mark's particular claim to fame, I would say, is that his Masters research really helped to shape the existing BAMBA Good Practice Guidelines for mindfulness teachers and in the workplace. So thank you for that, Mark. And also thank you again for all of the work and yeah, the effort and the fantastic approach that you gave to this particular piece of work that we've done recently in BAMBA. And then Monty, away from Monty there. So Monty is an MBCT teacher and is teacher trained, an award-winning mindfulness teacher and app creator. Very interesting. You can see a lot of Monty's work actually online via Instagram and LinkedIn. And he's also a counsellor, a trainee transpersonal psychotherapist, and also works as a brand consultant, specialising in particularly strategic, qualitative research and insight. So again, a big thank you to you, Monty. Both of you have been absolutely phenomenal to work with, and really appreciate you, both of you, and all of the effort that you put into this particular piece of work. Thank you so much from all of us at BAMBA. So I'm going to hand over to both of you for you to lead the rest of this session. And if any questions or observations come up throughout, pop them into the chat. I'm sure that Mark and Monty will manage the session as we go through, and if there's opportunities to take questions as they come up, may do that, or we may leave them till the end. But if you think of it in the moment, pop it in the chat and then we'll see it populated at the same time. I think that'd be really helpful. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Steph. Appreciate that. So hopefully you'll recognize this slide. I mean, hopefully why you're all here today, because you've read what we're going to address today, and thought it's of some interest to you. So that's why we're all here today. But the things that we sort of found from our research, which we're going to go through, some of the challenges and some of the key challenges facing the workforce currently, what the perceptions of mindfulness are in the workplace, critically what's stopping organizations from commissioning mindfulness, but also what is driving people to commission mindfulness when they do, what the modern meditation landscape currently looks like, the challenges that poses us in the field, but also the opportunity, and we'll end with really what's next. So just to give some context, we've been working on this for, it's well over a year, but yeah, it's pretty much all of 2024. And what we started with and what we wanted to do was capture some quantitative data. So we engaged a specialist in quantitative surveying, quantitative data capture, and we went out to over 100 HR decision makers across the UK. So it was just UK-based organisations, and they were asked to complete a 10-minute survey, really, so we could get an understanding of current attitudes towards well-being, what people were commissioning, why they were commissioning it, where mindfulness sat within that sort of commissioning world, and also then a bit more, and drilling into a bit more detail of what was being commissioned, how it was being delivered, and what they were capturing around mindfulness. And on the back of that, we then recruited something in the region of about 20 of people that had been involved in the quantitative data capture to join 5 focus groups. And those focus groups into ones that were very familiar with mindfulness, and maybe were also members of BAMBA, or their teachers and organisations delivering the programs with members of BAMBA, right the way through to those that had maybe offered mindfulness before, but weren't offering it anymore. Those that were offering counselling and therapy and coaching as alternatives, all that was their main well-being thread. So we got a real range of people in those focus groups, and in that we explored the different their approaches to well-being, what resonated with them, and particularly around sort of BAMBA's propositions, and what BAMBA was offering and how that resonated with them. So I'm just going to hand over to Monty for this slide.
Thanks, Mark. So it's not a very happy way to start our presentation, but it's really important to say people used to talk about the mental health crisis, and it was like, it's not a crisis anymore. It's just the way that things are. And we heard this time and time again from different people within our sample. People are struggling, employees are experiencing different mental health challenges, and COVID obviously is part of this. We kind of know it was going on before, and COVID sort of pushed it. But actually, what's interesting is that people were also mentioning things like isolation and loneliness that was caused by working from home all the time and not being in a shared space like the office. So companies are commissioning mental health interventions as it's understood as being fundamental to their success. But I guess the challenge is that lots and lots of mental health providers also understand that it's fundamental to their success. So there are suddenly loads and loads and loads of options. And this felt like there was a challenge for them. People were talking about commissioners really need to make an informed decision on how to move forward, what kind of things to offer. So they're kind of going quite deep into this and preparing different presentations with different stats and science supporting the effectiveness that they will then often go and take to their boss and say, well, this is what I think we should do, and this is why it's going to work, and here's the proof. This quote here: we operate in high pressure, creative environment where people can be prone to isolation. I see that without the support, I can see that without the support, a lot of people would really struggle, and we would be likely have a much less cohesive organization. So this is the reality now, that this is something that's definitely needed and is being used by lots of people. And on the next slide, I'll show you a bit what is actually being commissioned. So 64% of the people that we spoke to are offering some form of well-being support. So you can see that counselling therapy is at the top here, 64%. Within that 64% are offering counselling or therapy. Then we have coaching, and then we have mindfulness. So 37% of people across the UK who are offering some kind of well-being support are offering mindfulness, which is great. We also saw that there was a correlation between people offering counseling and therapy and coaching and often offering mindfulness in addition to this. And this makes sense, as we all know, because of the awareness nature of these different things. They can all kind of help each other. I felt it was quite interesting that things like yoga, breath work were a bit further down. So just gave a little indication of where we were with mindfulness. And I've got some quotes on the next slide. I'm not going to read all of these quotes out. I think you've all got this, but I'll just read the middle one. If we didn't provide these benefits, we believe that our employees would feel undervalued, more stressed and unsupported, and have reduced engagement and work less collaboratively, feeling more isolated. So you can see the need here. I think there's a statistic as well around the biggest cause of churn within companies is when they don't have a friend at work. So you can see the working from home, it's having an effect, and that kind of leaves an opportunity for us as teachers. But the other thing that we did find when we spoke to people about, what is mindfulness is this skepticism, and this quote here: the wellness field is a cesspit of lies and skullduggery. Having an organization that says their courses are scientifically proven helps them stand out for the crowd. And that sort of segues me into handing over to Mark for the next slide.
think that, so thanks, Monty. The thing that really surprised us and jumped out at us is really how many people that we spoke to, and also the data that we collected, either through the quant or the sort of, we did a bit of a pre-task before the focus groups, and then obviously in the focus groups, how many people didn't really fully understand what mindfulness was, and we heard it many times coming at it from various different angles as to not understanding it, what the benefits are, and and mindfulness sitting within this, as Monty said, and those quotes will quite stand out. The snake oil salesman, the cesspit of lies and skullduggery. We sort of sit as a field in this sphere, and it came out very strongly in the groups that it's just a minefield, and that people still don't understand what mindfulness is. A lot of people we spoke to. And they're bombarded with multiple claims of what mindfulness can do, or what any other well-being offer can give to their staff, or them as individuals. So there's a real sense of not, who do you trust in this? Who do you actually trust in this? And we all know that mindfulness now just sort of seems to permeate every part of our social media or our TV or whatever, whenever we, bookshelves, whatever, even magazine shelves now. So it's a crazy world in the last 20 years. So people are making these decisions based on a lot of information that's out there, and they're making up their own facts without really being informed choices. And we heard that with a lot of people we spoke to in focus groups. And there's a real overconfidence. People would say really confident in focus groups, well, this is what it is. This is it. I understand it, and then make a decision about it and be really firm in that belief. And that was quite interesting. And one of the quotes there is that that came out of the focus groups, that, I've got a yoga teacher, so why do I need a mindfulness teacher as well? And what we picked up from the quant was that there's actually 63% of organizations. So of the organizations that we went out to, we had some filtering, and we sort of basically I don't know if I'm the right word now, but basically people that weren't offering well-being at all weren't part of that survey. So we whittled it down. And then we sort of drilled into what people were offering. And of those ones that were offering some well-being, as part of their sort of, just offering well-being in there as a sort of staff support, 63% of them weren't offering mindfulness. So 37% were, but 63% weren't. And they were offering other things. And what was quite interesting was, of those 63%, nearly half of them, so 28%, had previously offered mindfulness but stopped. So we sort of then drilled into that a bit more. And what we were able to then do, again, from the quant, is actually find out what it was, why people weren't offering it, or why they'd stopped it. And that was, and these are some of the quotes and things that people essentially said in the quantitative survey, that it's too abstract, don't understand the meaning of it, and don't know about it. And quite sort of significantly, I think the one in the middle is it's very difficult to purchase it as a standalone offering, but also to articulate it in terms of a direct business value. And I think that was a real challenge for people. And so what we found is that the majority of the people were sitting at the bottom of this pyramid, still stuck in sort of really understanding what mindfulness is. And the minority of us, which is really us in the room here today, the field, all of us here, we've been on this journey. I suspect many of us have come into meditation, come into mindfulness, started a practice, understood what it is, and understood the benefits to us personally. And then some of us gone on to see how we may bring that into our working lives, into our lives, whatever it is we do. And we've then looked and done maybe some research and looked at case studies and evidence to support that, or we may have even done our own research to back up what mindfulness can do. And we've also understood, because we may have trained as teachers, the importance of delivering mindfulness as a teacher, and being a trained teacher, and what it means to us. And then we've got to the point where we understand what good practice is, what CPD is, supervision, why safety is important to us. but the majority of the people we spoke to in our research didn't understand that. So when we talk about safety, if we as we are now talking more about diversity, inclusion, and greater reach for mindfulness, a lot of the people we spoke to weren't in that space. They were still trying to grapple with what it is and what the benefits are. And so they felt like there's some awareness that needs to happen in terms of increasing and an increased awareness through education. And so I'll ping back over to Monty.
So one of the big problems here that we're all facing is technology, because yeah, what tends to happen when, and this is something that happened in this project, but it's happened in, I've done hundreds of research projects. It always happens when people don't know the answer. They don't go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go and research this for a little bit to inform myself on what is the answer. They make up a truth and they believe it, and that becomes the truth for them. Okay. And that's what we were seeing with their relation to mindfulness. As Mark was saying, there's this real confidence in their incorrectness. And apps, well, it just makes sense that it's best to learn mindfulness through an app on your phone. I can't find my phone to show you this, but like, you know, it's convenient. It's literally in your hand. It can have a new practice every single day, and it can cover loads of areas. You can have a course on confidence, a course on stress, a course on, I don't know, health. Well, and so from the outside looking in, it sounds like it's the best way to learn mindfulness. And a lot of the people on the sample were saying, yeah, my team have Headspace. What could be better than them having a literal teacher that lives on their phone? And they really believed that. What they didn't know is that the reality, and we know this is fact, this is a stat, is that only 3.9% of people who download a mental health app use it for more than 15 days. So that's the reality of what's going on. But the sort of reality that people, the belief is very, very much at odds with that. Um, you know, from someone who's commissioning a mindfulness course, apps are much cheaper, they're more convenient, and they promise similar results to live teaching. You know, all the stress, resilience building, all that kind of stuff. That's all in the promise. And apps have a huge marketing budget. You know, Calm was sold for $1 billion. Like they've got phenomenally high marketing budgets. So we're up against this thing that's kind of letting us down at the moment. People are saying things like mindfulness offering has to be suitable for all employees as opposed to bespoke mindfulness training, which is why we feel that offering an app works better. Okay, this is an education issue. They don't understand that actually fundamentally mindfulness gives you the core of how to use it, which you can then apply to different areas of your life. They just don't understand, and why would they understand? Because no one's told them. People say things like we offer Headspace and its convenience, and the content means that they use it daily. We don't know. They don't actually know that. So this is what we're up against. And if we go on to the next slide, we can see a little bit about how people are commissioning mindfulness at the moment.
Just a quick one, Monty. I've just seen a question come up in the chat. Do you want to take it now? It
Oh,
relates
there
to
is.
So it's from Ken. He's just asking what the source of the statistic that only 3.9% of mental. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have seen that. I do not know, but it's okay. So I can tell you how I came to that statistic, because I have a mental health app, right? So when I first launched my mental health app 4 years ago, the statistic was around 10%. And when I was doing something with it recently, I looked again and I found the new statistic. I can find it. It's quite Googleable. I found it, and the person I was working with it also found it independently of me. So that's where that 3.9% comes from. I'm sure there can be a way that we can share the original with you after this, if that's helpful. So, how are the people who are commissioning it actually delivering it? So what we saw was 70% of the people that commissioning mindfulness are using technology as part of the delivery. So we had 42% who are combining an app or an online platform and a live teacher or live teaching. As it was a quantitative survey, we couldn't get into huge detail of what that was. We've got 29% of people are just offering an app on its own. And then 29% of people are just doing in-person teaching. Okay. So there is a sense that in person we're kind of at the bottom now. And again, education could change this because people just simply don't know the differences in effect. We did manage to record the benefits for people who are offering mindfulness, but just to say, this is a small base size. It's 14 people, because only 45% of the people who are offering mindfulness measured the benefits. So Mark and I were talking about before, it would be quite interesting to be able to look at the different benefits in relation to combination of both, or people using apps or people using in person. But that would make the base size so small that I don't think it would be really be viable. However, what we can see is that people who are offering mindfulness do find the benefits that we all know about. Less anxiety, 93% less anxiety is phenomenal. Better focus, heightened mental clarity as well, reduced overwhelm, collaboration, sleep, creativity, less reactive, that kind of thing. So if we look a little bit more about mindfulness and what people reported in our quantitative survey, we see that of the 37% of people who are offering mindfulness for staff, 15% are also offering mindfulness as part of leadership development. Now, people talked about why they're offering mindfulness. They said things like it helps employees who suffer from stress or anxiety. It supports the workforce to raise the awareness of their own personal well-being in order to address any underlying health and well-being issues. People talk about resilience, focus, stress management. But I think it's important to say that within our sample, mindfulness was part of a wider offering. It wasn't like, this is mindfulness, it's the answer to all of our kind of it's our approach. It's part of an umbrella, it's part of a strategy, it's part of a bigger strategy. It's one thing that fits in. As we know from our own practices, it is something that fits in very well with other things, and this is what we were seeing reflected in the results that we saw. So I'm going to hand over to Mark now.
So I think just to try and wrap up and summarize this, there's a lot of data behind this. We've tried to sort of summarize it in in terms of key messages and things that we feel would be helpful for the field to understand in terms of what we found from talking to people. But the majority of people we spoke to just didn't know about the existence of live mindfulness courses. And like Monty was saying, technology has really filled that sort of gap for people. And it seems to be the panacea of for a lot of people that we spoke to. And it was really the minority that understood the benefits of mindfulness being delivered in person by teachers, by trained teachers, and teachers that were following some sort of pathway, engaged in CPD, attached to a professional body. And people understand that. As a principal, people understand that. They know about counsellors and therapists, and they know they go to their organisation, professional bodies, they'll be getting a counsellor or therapist that's trained. So they understand that as a principal, but they've not made that connection with mindfulness yet. And in terms of the importance of having teachers that are trained, and why it's important to have, why it's better to have a teacher deliver it, maybe supported by technology and app, because technology and apps are always going to be there, and we've got to embrace them. But it's finding that right combination and that technology is not necessarily the panacea that the people we spoke to seem to think it was. And that is, I think it came out very strongly that that's the problem that we've got in terms of the workplace and getting this engagement with workplace. On the plus and on the positive side, what we did find is that when people did understand it, and the people that we spoke to that did understand mindfulness and had it as sort of embedded in their organization, it actually becomes an essential aspect of their mental health support. They understand why it's support, because it in many ways what came across was that people are going to counselling and therapists, so people are getting into mental health crisis, and so a lot of organizations are thinking we need to provide people with counsellors and therapists. The organizations, people that have got mindfulness embedded, understood that it's a way of helping people cope with that stress, that anxiety, to feel more connected, to feel more cohesive, part of the organization, to feel more creative, to feel more heard, that mindfulness helps them with that. And that is really important. So actually it should be something that's offered before people need to get to the point of counselling and therapy. And so this quote, I think, sort of summarized it really, that somebody said that it's, despite its critical importance, so they understood that it was critically important, it's challenging for companies to purchase it as a standalone offering because it's difficult to articulate it in terms of business value, and it's hard to quantify. So I think there's a clear opportunity for us as mindfulness teachers, for us in the field of mindfulness, promoting mindfulness, to take people on this sort of journey. I'm going to hand back to Monty for the last slide.
Thanks. I just had a moment of, before I go to this slide, found the statistic of 3.5, so I'm going to put it in the chat. I did it using AI because, you know, it's quicker, but it's there for you now. So what next? Where does this kind of leave us? We all know it's not going anywhere. We're living in a kind of unprecedented moment, global moment of uncertainty. We know this is affecting people at work, and we all know that like mindfulness can really help this. But what isn't helping is that mindfulness disinformation is everywhere. People are literally scrolling through it on their phones daily. Another statistic, this isn't mindfulness, over 50% of the information on ADHD on TikTok is just completely incorrect. So this is what we're up against. There isn't, I don't know if there's what it is for mindfulness. I was listening to Stephen Bartlett, please don't judge me. My wife recommended it to me the other day, and there was he was clearly a brain expert who went around the world scanning people's brains and telling them what they can do. And he had a very calming voice. And he was talking about it's really, really important that you strengthen the prefrontal cortex. He was like, that's the most useful thing you can do one of the most useful things you can do for your brain. And I was like, oh, he's not mentioning meditating. And he then said in his very calming voice, you know, you can meditate. That will make you calm. And then just dismissed it and carried on. So he's confidently entirely wrong about what meditating. Yes, calmness is one thing of it, but there are other things he can do. And there are many, many, many people out there who are just spreading stuff that isn't helpful. And this means that people are being let down. What's happening is they're approaching mindfulness and meditation believing it's one thing. They're having an experience that doesn't lead to the one thing they were led to believe, but they don't blame, oh, I was told the wrong thing. They just say mindfulness doesn't work, and they leave it and they do something else. Honestly, I think Mark and I were really surprised about how bad this is and the degree of misunderstanding that we found around mindfulness. And I think that the pyramid sort of slide we shared is really important. I wonder if as teachers we forget the journey we've been on and where we started and that kind of first step that we need to take. Most people are still needing to take that first step. So there's a real need for education about what proper mindfulness is, not just, you know, following the breath, like actually what we all know it is because we've been through the process to get us here. And the evidence, because there's so much evidence to support it. Steve, for the workplace, people need to understand, how is it affecting working life? There's loads of science out there showing how it does affect working life and how it supports people in working life, but also personal life. But also people need to be taught how's the best way to learn it? What's the best thing that can be done? And which programs are more effective? This is all information that is out there. We don't need to do anything new. We just need to educate people with what they've got, to stop them making up their own truth about what mindfulness is, because that's what's happening now. Because then when we can educate people and commissioners to help grow and increase mindfulness, that means that we'll increase adoption throughout the UK and maybe even beyond. But thanks, guys. Any questions, any thoughts? Really keen to know how this has landed with everyone.
I'm going to stop sharing just so we can all be back on the
Thanks,
screen.
Mark.
We'll jump back on again to it if people want to go back to a particular slide.
Sure, yeah, good idea. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Monty, for that update. Yeah, so let's just take a pause, I think would be useful. And for any of you that have just got any reflections or observations from that session, that was a great first question around that 3.9 stat. And well done, Monty, for finding it so quickly and then sending that out so that people absolutely can cite that. And as Sally always does, that you'll get sight of this pack anyway. There's a lot of stats in there that you can use in your discussions with workplace settings, or when you're writing pitches and things like that, and to remind you all that this information is quite new, right? So yes, the research has been done over the last 8 to 12 months, but this is really new information for the field. Thank you very much for an informative and helpful presentation. Thank you for that. So yeah, let's take some questions or observations, or just general curiosities around that session would be good. Maybe just give that a bit of space for whatever's there just to arise for you.
Just to say, Steph, if people have got some questions around the data, if they post them send them to Sally or yourself or to BAMBA, I'm happy to
Sure.
drill into them, after this session's ended.
So I've got a question. I was going to wait for a second to see if anything else came up first, but this is not necessarily just to you, Mark and Monty. This is to everybody here, which is as somebody, as you know, yes, I do some work for BAMBA on a key time basis, but a lot of my work centres around working with medium-sized enterprises and corporates in the mindfulness space and wellbeing more broadly. And I'm curious just to understand from everybody that's on this session how difficult you find it actually, getting in front of decision makers and being able to, I guess, crystallize mindfulness in a way for those decision makers, in order for you to be able to find that space where you're able to then move forward in some capacity to support a workplace environment in the work that you do. What does that feel like out there for you at the moment? What's the experience? Susan, I think you're going to speak.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I mean, my experience, and this is a sample size of one, well, I suppose I know other people, is many organizations who have already invested in mindfulness, started exploring it, are continuing to do that and feeling the benefit of it. I think with so much uncertainty, a lot of people are more sort of hesitant. I do think that there's a lot more focus on resilience and how does mindfulness support resilience, and working with that can be really helpful. And as Mark and Monty have said, there's got to be data. to show how it's impacting people, teams, leaders, and when you need to make it easy for the person who's commissioning the training, because it's often challenging. So having that can be really helpful. And I can see a couple of people nodding, so that probably resonates with others.
Yeah. And I just wonder as well, Susan, that's great. Thank you for that response. That's really insightful in terms of the question that I asked. But if there are people on this session today that might sit in maybe in a commissioning seat or alongside one, what would you say it is that those people are looking for? You know, what is it specifically that you think, you know, would help the cause or the case for mindfulness to land maybe more broadly in an organizational setting, whether that's medium, enterprise, or corporate at corporate level? Maybe somebody. Thank you, Mari. Wonderful.
Hi, Steph. Sorry, I'm struggling with my voice today, so apologies, guys, if I'm a bit squeaky. But so I guess I mean I'm obviously coming at it more from a corporate point of view, but I think building on what Susan said, then, you know, evidence absolutely key. You know, you need some way of being able to give some real, tangible return on investment type data, I guess, you know, and it is hard. I think you called this out. I can't remember if it was Mark or Monty, but on one of your slides, it is hard to quantify, but it is doable and relatively easily. You know, with some fairly simple surveys and things. So I think that's one element for sure. I think and this might apply to medium enterprises, Steph, you'll have better understanding of that. But, you know, I think it needs to be scalable, because if it scales, then it can be sustainable. And it was really interesting, Monty, that you pulled out that stat around, you know, I can't remember the figure now, but of the 63% that weren't currently offering it, 28% had but had stopped. Was it something around that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, isn't it? And that's kind of a sense that I have, certainly, you know, from having had a lot of kind of peers doing similar over the last 10 or so years in other corporates. You know, there's been a huge spike, obviously, around COVID. A lot of people going in with the apps because they seemed fairly easy to scale, but not necessarily really landing something that was sustaining. So I think there's scalability, but then there's something else about sustainability. And I think for me, that's about how do you anchor it into a workplace? So it's not just what you're offering as a trainer or an expert, you know, organization, but something that helps it to live, you know, and embed in the culture somehow of that organization.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Maury. That's really helpful. Thank you. Any other views from either side of that? You know, so if you're sitting on the side of somebody that's commissioning, or actually you're on the other side of the desk, which is somebody that's pitching, let's say, and excuse the language, maybe to try to find their way into an organisational setting. Any other views that are coming up for you on that? Oh, go on, Monty. Thanks.
I just think there are different things about, because that mindfulness is, because of everything we've spoken about, the sort of lack of comprehension means that people they don't understand why meditating is something that you do with your eyes closed, usually at home. How can that change? You know, people just don't understand how that changes things for work, how it can improve people's work. I find that there's a sort of slight element when I've work with companies, there's a little bit of a trust and leap of faith thing, and the science that you can offer there helps hugely. And slightly frustratingly, when you're pitching the work, you usually can't meditate with them, because as soon as you actually offer a practice, then things change, because people just get it and they're like, oh, this isn't this weird sort of, I'm not going to magical states, as Mark says, but like this idea, it becomes more real. It's like, oh, it's an awareness thing. I'm actually kind of in tune with what's going on, but through the experience of practice, which is the same as how we all teach it, right? Like, you know, there's a reason why we don't talk about meditating for an hour and then go, and now let's try it now. When we teach a course, there's a reason why we start with the practice first. But unfortunately, when we're pitching, that isn't always possible, and that can make it really difficult because it is something that is best to experience. Often the three-step breathing space, I try and get that in before we go in, and that can be useful.
Thanks, Monty. Thanks, Simon.
Hi, yeah. I mean, one thing that coming from the pitching side of things, as you beautifully put it, Stephanie, I think for me, it's like it is around what do you begin with? You know, what do you start with? And for me, if there was some kind of, I don't know, something that's already produced, like a pitching pack that you can take to HR or you know, some information that you can give rather than random bits of research, check this out, check that out. So I'm wondering if that's if somebody's looking at, I don't know, producing that kind of thing, whether BAMBA or Mindfulness Initiative or are looking at that.
Let's just allow that to land. Go on, Mark, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really pertinent you've made that point, Simon. And apologies, Steph, you're going to let that one. It hit home with me. It came up a lot in the focus groups when we were talking to people. You know, if there was an organization that actually, what I want is to understand that an organization that I feel akin to. So if I'm in the financial world, then what other financial organizations are offering this? So knowing there's case studies, but what they want to know is not, they want to know why, you know, why are people offering mindfulness? Why is that organization offering mindfulness? You know, what is it that, you know, and how many people how many people in their organization have benefited from it, and what are the benefits that they've had? They want those real tangible things, and that gives them, that's what people were asking for. So if I had that gives the credibility. And they, you know, this bit of work was commissioned by BAMBA, and you know, people felt that BAMBA had that credibility, but they really said what they really want is those case studies.
Yeah.
You know, because that helps them to, and it needs to be quick. People haven't got time to trawl through and go and find this data. I mean, ChatGPT may solve that problem for us, but you know, that's not, we shouldn't be relying on that.
Thanks, Mark. And Mari again.
Yeah, just building on that. So Simon, I don't know if you're aware, but I mean, there have been some really great publications over the years from the Mindfulness Initiative. So the I can't remember what it was called now, but the original kind of workplace document, I think, was in
Field book.
in 2015, wasn't it? I think that came out. Obviously slightly out of date now, and I know when I worked with Ruth, they were talking about maybe refreshing that. So I guess that's something to watch this space on, but also the mindfulness innovation workbook that's come out more recently and has been refreshed. I think is probably also definitely has some good case studies and things in there as well. So I mean, they're not perfect for what you're asking for, but they definitely were. The original workplace one was definitely around that pitching and, you know, trying to help people understand how that they could take this into an organization and different types of organizations.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. I'll take a look at that again. I have got it, but yeah, brilliant.
Just am I still on? Yeah, I am. I've got it here actually. Sorry, beg your pardon. Is this what you're referring to, Mari?
Yeah, is that the innovation one?
This is the field book for mindfulness innovations, which talks to workplace, but this was republished in 2024, guys. So if you haven't seen that, it's on the Mindfulness Initiative, but it was republished in 2024 because it's got new research in there. But I think, are you alluding to something different?
Yeah, there was a precursor of that, very similar.
Which hasn't been updated. You're right.
That was much more specifically around just the workplace. But yeah, you know, and obviously very happy to help anybody specifically around, particularly around corporates and pitching, if that's of help to anybody.
I'm just wondering, because it's interesting how we've managed to, I don't know if this was my fault that I've led us down this pathway, because I used the word pitch and that kind of got picked up a little bit on in various different capacities. But I suppose ultimately, and I'm sorry if I've made this assumption, but there's something in my mind that says, we've done a piece of workplace research. Within that research that Mark and Monty have just presented, there is a shed load of stats, a shed load of opportunity to create case studies off the back of, a shed load of information where people that are, bearing in mind that both the guys spoke to commissioners of workplace wellbeing initiatives, so a shed load of stuff there that we could use when we are looking to engage in conversation in any organisational setting when it comes to looking after employee wellbeing. And I know that many of us on the screen are multifaceted, so mindfulness is only part of what we do. It might be that we do other things too. But I am actually now wondering, now that I've somehow managed to take us down this pathway, as to whether there would be something that we could do at BAMBA, Mari, to do an hours of education on how to put something good together like that. What are commissioners of workplace wellbeing looking for, and how can we support our members and those that want to come to an event like this to put something together like that with a few ideas and discussion threads? That could be something that we take away. So thank you for that offer, because if we can do that in the round for a bigger group of people, I think that would be awesome, and I can see a lot of people smiling and nodding their heads. So that would be a great event for us. Good. Just looking at time. Any other thoughts or little rumblings that might be coming up for people that you might want to just air?
I wonder, so all the why and the impact and how you measure in the case studies and all of that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was, and maybe this is more like going to particles of what we're speaking about today, but I was wondering also, how do you explain the design, the implementation, the model that you're going to be using, and how that you can then, because there are many ways of doing this, many times tied to budget, but how long, how often, in which modality, then that you can also tie that to the impact and how you're going to measure or not any project or initiative, program. But yeah.
So I think what I'm hearing is that you're asking about, how to create a level of understanding around the concept of it, in terms of, let's say for instance, this many sessions for this many people over this period of time, and then what the impact of that will be. Is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Yeah, I suppose. And it's like, how you, because I suppose it's part of the why, but this is the how we're going to do it, and how we do it this way, because then the impact is this other way. So we're talking about, for example, apps, they're going to be there and we cannot deny them and we need to work with them, but that's not what we're going to base our work. We're going to base it in doing it in this way, because it's more powerful, or this is how mindfulness work at its best. There's something around those, like the design of it and the impact.
Yeah, and I suppose Mark, you might.
It's a big question, and I miss, like.
But there is some of that included in that research, isn't there? Go on, Mark, Monty. You're both.
It's something. Thank you for that. Is it Alejandra? Alejandra? Apologies if I pronounced it.
No, that's perfect.
Thank you. It was something that Monty and I were talking about just before this session. Because one of the slides, and it sort of, as always, when you look through research data, you look at it one way, you look at another way, you're analysing it. And there was something we posed ourselves was, is there something in the data that draws us, because we was, the small number, although it is a small number, but the ones that are measuring the benefits and the results of mindfulness, are those the ones that are delivering it in person? And are those the ones that are delivering sort of, over a long period of time? So they're delivering mindfulness as sort of 10-week, 8-week courses, where people are getting at least an hour's sort of session, and then really trying to get meditation embedded, and working through the sort of courses that we've trained to teach. And I think the data is there, but we're sort of looking at a small sample size. So the danger, because that wasn't the purpose of our research. So we'd have to be careful drawing that out. But it is something I was going to go back and look at to see those that are measuring it, are they the ones and that are reporting the benefits that we found? Are those the ones that are delivering it in a particular way? But I suspect that there's research out there for people that there is. I know there's research, because when I was looking at this 10 years ago now, there was research as to how best to embed mindfulness practice from an individual perspective, certainly. Sorry, leave it at that.
Yeah. And that's the point I was going to
Thank
make, that there are loads of because our study 100 HR managers, but then obviously that we had focus groups and we had lots of different things, but there are tens of maybe not tens of thousands, there are thousands of studies on mindfulness out there that can directly kind of speak to this. There are studies about how long people keep meditating for after a live course, for example, that speaks directly to the 3.9 mental health app users. I believe that the study there was around MBCT, and they found that 60% of people were still meditating after 9 months, I believe. And I think they went further than that, did another check-in. But there's all of this stuff is out there. It's that there might not be a need to create something new necessarily. It's just there's a slight issue as well. It's like there's a sort of paradox of choice we have. There are thousands and thousands of studies of mindfulness. So where do people start? We can help them with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Karen's just said, I'm just going to close off now, everybody, because it's 1 o'clock, but in the midst of putting my website together, and it would be really helpful to have a short, concise piece of research in layman's language to put on my homepage for corporates. I think that's a fair shout. I think that what feels like to me, and I'll wrap up really quickly, is that there might be something else that we can do on this at BAMBA in terms of, and Mark and Monty have both spoken to me recently about what do we do next then, right? So this particular piece of research is helping us shape the future of what we do around events, and Maury pointed to that very easily earlier in terms of actually there might be something I can do here to support this piece around what needs to be in an information pack when we're talking to organisations around commissioning us for wellbeing initiatives. So but this piece of research talks directly to what BAMBA are going to do about it, and I think that Mark and Monty both approached me around actually what do we do next with this research, and there could be something around that we look at. So thank you for bringing that question forward. I think that was really helpful to close this off. But as always, it never stops here, does it? We continue with these events, we continue with these discussions. I'd encourage everybody to find a way to stay connected. We've got a teachers networking event coming up in May. Sally, can you remind me the date quickly? Sorry, put you on the spot, haven't I?
It is, I think it's on the 8th of May.
It's on the 8th of May. So there's a teachers networking event on the 8th of May that we'll be hosting, the second one for this year. The January one was epic. We had a huge amount of people there. So do try to come along to that. You don't need to be a BAMBA member to be there. If you're in the field working in some capacity, do come along. Let's keep these conversations going. But yeah, thank you so much again, Mark, Monty. Thanks to everybody that contributed with their questions and discussion today. Sally will do the usual. We'll get the pack circulated, but let's keep this going. Let's keep this moving. I think there's something here that we should continue discussing for sure. And thanks, Maury, for that offer. I'm going to pick that up with you. Another thing on the agenda.